What's up, Gamer Nation? Same as before, I'm Adam Mater, and this is Rent or Buy. Now, you can go ahead and stop posting all those comments because for the fourth episode of Rent or Buy, we'll be taking a look at Remedy Entertainment's Alan Wake. So let's get this thing started. Alan Wake is described on its box as a psychological action thriller. This is basically a fancy way of saying that it's a horror game that tries to delve into action from time to time. Now, the two elements of action and horror really don't mix well, in my opinion. They're sort of like oil and water, especially in a video game. This is because action needs to make the player feel like they're a complete badass and have total control over every situation, whereas horror needs to remove power from the player, make them feel like the victim in certain cases. But does Alan Wake blend these successfully? Better than any game I've seen done thus far, and it's able to do it because of a key play element inside the game. Everything in the game that you need to fight is coated in a layer of darkness, and before you can deal any sort of damage to these things, you need to blast away the darkness using lights, such as flares and flashlights and other things. But remove the character's ability to produce light, and you make him the victim. Give the character his light back, and you can make him a badass. Now, the situations where it went from one to the other was a little jarring, and I wondered how Alan kept losing his flashlight, but it was still fun. The toggling between the two wasn't so bad. But more important than the blending of these two elements is the plot. Back in 2001, when this game was first being advertised, they said his story was going to be a big key part of it. And did they hold up to that? I'd definitely say so. I mean, the plot was good enough where you could convert it into a book and I'd probably read it. And how did they go about doing this? Simple things like having the main character, Alan, narrate while you were playing the game, not just in cutscenes, was pretty entertaining and kept the thing sort of flowing throughout the entire game. And this is probably because the voice actor that they hired was pretty decent at his job. I'd give him a thumbs up. Other things like delving up the game into little sections called chapters and reviewing previous chapters as you progress to the next one gave it an episodic feel, sort of like Lost. But the game wasn't all good. I'd have to say there was two major issues, and if you've seen any other review on this game, you know already that the lip syncing was definitely subpar. It can be a bit of a distraction, but in a game where the plot is so crucial, I think it's more than a bit of a distraction. You need to be able to relate to the characters before any sort of story really matters to you. And having those characters look just downright goofy during the cutscenes because they can't even have the words coming out of their mouth kind of ruins the whole experience. And the other thing would definitely have to be product placement. This game is sort of a long-running commercial for Verizon and Energizer. You can have product placement in games. I totally understand it. Something needs to pay the bills. But when you're just goofily handing out like the Energizer logo every 2 seconds or so, it kind of gets annoying and pulls me away from the game. So I would have turned that down a notch, but maybe they didn't have the control over that if they needed the checks paid. Let's hop straight into the timeline now to see how long it took me to beat this game. Green is work and red is the game. You can see I dropped in about 3 good hours alternating between work and play on this day. It was a great game, and I probably stayed up too late this night playing it because I had to get up early for work again tomorrow. But as soon as I got home, I played for another 2.5 hour chunk, and another 2.5 hour chunk just broken up with a tiny little break because I had a few other things to do. Then we move on to the third, and shockingly, final day that I had the game. So that breaks it up into about 8 hours of gameplay. $1 per hour if you rent it, and a lot more if you buy it. For these last few days, I consumed just copious amounts of cocaine, and you don't need to know about that. That's definitely the drawback to these linear story-driven games, is that they focus so great on quality, that they sort of fall short in the quantity category. But that's okay if the game's good enough where you can play it twice. Alan Wake sort of just fell short at meeting that benchmark. There is one other thing to take into account before I slap this into the rent category, and that's the game's having downloadable content available July 27th for 800 Microsoft points. That's $10. And that's sort of the reason why I still have to slap it in the rent category. I can't justify $10 for an add-on to a game that I was able to beat on $8. So, sorry Alan Wake, I'm gonna have to slap you in the rent category. That's it for Rent or Buy. If you want to see any of your favorite games on this show, then go ahead and post them down here in the comments section. Any other suggestions for the show can also go down there. I'd love to see what you guys think, and any way to improve the show is greatly appreciated. So, I'm Adam Mater. See you later, Gamer Nation.